and ended up on the other side of the van in the middle of the road, unconscious, and people around, they thought I was dead because I wasn't moving.
A kid in trouble all the time, who needed the structure only the military could give him. His father wouldn't sign for the Marines. Life vectored him to the Air National Guard instead. This conversation we're having right now, who is still performing well in public, but falling apart in private. One drunk night on a motorcycle nearly ended everything. Yet it didn't end him. He led in public. He was falling apart in private until he learned to lean on his brothers.
I needed to get out of uniform in order to fix myself.
Chief James Brown, in his own words. This is Voice for Valor. But let me start when you're back in the day when you're a young buck. Before the uniform and before Chief, who was James Brown?
Wow, that's a loaded question there. I was just a young kid and a young man trying to figure out what he wanted to do in life. I knew it had something to do with the uniform because back to my earliest memories, I would put on a uniform that we got from the Army Navy store and run out in the woods and just do military stuff. And so I knew at an early age that's what I wanted to do. I just didn't know where I fit in. So, I was an only child, so we moved around a lot. So it was a lot of starting over all the time. I'd have a friend or two in one location, then we'd move and I'd have to start over again. And sometimes there was no one around, so I had to figure out how to, do things myself.
Why were you guys moving? Military jobs? What was the reason for all the moves?
No, my dad was changing jobs over the years, and we started in North Carolina, then went to Georgia, then to South Carolina, and ultimately South Carolina is where we landed long term. But even within South Carolina, we moved around a lot, so I was changing schools all the time. Now, I will say one of them was by my own doing that I had to change school.
Is that a nice way of saying you got kicked out?
That's a nice way of saying they told my dad if I messed up one more time, they were going to officially kick me out. So he's like, well, I know he's going to, so I'll go ahead and withdraw him.
How old were you when did you join the Guard, or did you start off active duty and then go to the Guard?
So no, I started out in the Guard.
Okay. So how old were you when you started the Guard?
18.
18. So fresh out of high school, or did you have one of those gap years where you're out causing trouble and then finally realized that you needed some direction?
No, I was already causing trouble, so I didn't have any gap years. I just went in. I enlisted in February of '92, and I had graduated the summer before in '91. Ironically, I say the summer of '91 because I had to go to summer school to graduate because I was. Oh yeah. I was one of those kids that I was just in trouble all the time. So I had to take economics in the summer after all my friends had already graduated, so I could graduate out of school.
So yeah, that's a shitty summer. Sorry to hear you had to do that. So you joined. So here's my next question for you then. What did the Guard give you that you did not know you needed at the time? How long did it take you to figure out the Guard had something for you that you needed?
I don't know that it was the Guard that provided me. The military structure in general is what I needed. My dad was pretty rigid, and it's just the way he was. I don't blame him for any of that. He was a product of his childhood and rearing and environment. So, but I needed something to provide some very rigid structure in the form of you don't have mom and dad to provide you some top cover. Now it's just you're a man, you're on your own, and you need to make decisions and be accountable for those decisions as an adult. So, I needed the military to provide me that structure and alignment. And so I knew how I ended up in the Air Guard is a crazy story in and of itself. So when I was a senior, me and a friend of mine, Mike, ironically, Mike, we got to talking one
Does he have
day.
the same birthday as you?
No, he doesn't. So that's an important point for those that are going to watch this. You and I have the same birthday.
Crazy. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. So me and him got to talking one day, and we're like, you know what, dude, let's join the Marine Corps on their buddy program. All right. So we take off to the recruiter in Columbia, South Carolina, downtown Columbia. And we walk into this recruiting station. And there's nobody there but us. And this recruiter starts talking to us. And he asked my buddy Mike, he's like, what is it you're interested in? What do you want to do? And Mike was like, I don't know. I just want to join the Marine Corps. So they're over there talking. And meanwhile, I'm standing off in the corner and I see this poster up on the wall. I'm staring at it. And the recruiter comes over to me and says, well, son, what do you think you might like doing? I pointed to it. I said, well, that looks pretty cool. He chuckled. He said, you know what that is? I said, it's a dude in a ghillie suit holding a sniper rifle. He said, Mass Force Recon. You don't choose to be in that. You get selected to do that. Me being the arrogant little kid went, okay, and? He goes, I'll tell you what. Come back next week. I'll give you a preliminary physical fitness examination and see where you're at, and we'll talk then. So sure enough, I went back the next week, and me and Mike both, we ran around the city block of Columbia just doing standard stuff. And the recruiter says, all right. He said, here you go. How old are you? I said, I'm 17. He goes, all right, you need your parent or legal guardian to sign this paperwork. I thought, okay, my dad will gladly sign this. So I get home and we're at the dinner table. And I slid that piece of paper to my dad. And he said, what is this? And I said, this is a form you need to sign so I can join the Marine Corps. He says, man, I ain't signing that. And I said, now I'm an irritated teenage kid. Yeah, exactly. I think. And I said, well, why not? He goes, because I don't want you to get into that and not like it and blame me for it. He says, so when you're 18, you do it yourself. Well, life happened between that moment and 8 months later that just vectored my life from that point on. So
is there a significant moment that made you change your mind from the Marines to go to the Air National Guard?
So I had wanted to do anything infantry related just because I didn't really know any better, I guess. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with it. And then it was, well, what about this pilot thing? First it was a helicopter pilot in the Army, then it was, a fighter pilot in the Navy, then it was a fighter pilot in the Navy. So I was all over the place. And I thought, well, let's pursue this pilot avenue and see what becomes of that. And like I said, life happened, and I could have pursued it if I wanted to, but I let other things get in the way of that. And just life kept getting vectored and vectored again and vectored again and vectored again. So that was the original plan, was something infantry related to Marine Corps. Then it morphed into, being a pilot in some branch of the service. It didn't matter which one. So, I had to, as well as I do, you got to have a 4-year degree. So I had applied to the Citadel, Clemson, and USC, and have been accepted in all their engineering programs, and was slated to go to the Citadel. And just, you ever heard the phrase, you cut your nose off to spite your face?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I did that by not going to any of them because my dad wanted me to. So because he wanted me to, I thought, no, I'm not going to do it now. And that, again, more irony here. So when I graduate and I tell him, I'm not going to college right now. And he said, well, you're not going to stay here for free. So either you're going to get a job and you can stay here, or you go to college and you can stay here for free. And I was like, well, I'm not going to college. So I got to figure out what I'm going to do. And he said, you know what? I, I got a job where I work that you can take on for a while. Now, mind you, I'm wanting to get away from him, and yet I ended up going to work for him.
Uh,
Oh yeah, and he found me the nastiest, grungiest job he could possibly find. He worked at a place that built boat trailers and car trailers, and I didn't have any skills, so I'm not a welder or a painter or anything. So he had me taking these metal components and dipping them in a 55-gallon drum of paint and hanging them up. I mean, it was just filthy, just crazy work. And I did that for a couple months. I was like, oh hell no, we're not gonna do this. So that
hey,
began
sometimes when you're young, it's good to figure out what you don't want to do.
yeah. So during that time, I met my ex-wife, and it just things went all kind of sideways from that point on.
So when you joined the Guard, a lot of folks don't understand the difference between active duty and the Guard. Can you tell us what that citizen airman is versus somebody signing up for 4 years of active duty?
4 years of active duty, you're at the mercy of that particular branch of service. You go where they tell you to go, whatever duty station that is, anywhere on the globe that they have a military installation that has your AFSC if you're in the Air Force. The Guard, you're pretty much you're a home station. Whatever unit is within your locale, that's where you perform your duties. And outside of your monthly or your monthly requirement or your 15 days, you're being an active citizen, you know, in a job somewhere. You could be I had a guy he had a PhD and was a pharmacist, but on his drill weekends, he was a mechanic on generators. And I'm like, dude, why are you here? And he said, man, he goes, I like the break. I like what I do here, and I like serving my country in a capacity that's not related to what I do Monday through Friday.
That's what I love about the Guard, and that's why it's so different than active duty for that exact purpose. You never know who's wearing that uniform. Our time together in Charlotte, one of the commanders that worked for us, he was a multimillionaire. He was a software cloud salesman and had, a huge bankroll, but you would never know that, right?
Yeah.
And then we got all these other guys and gals with so much depth and breadth of different experiences that, I mean, me being in all three, right? Started off active duty and then went to the reserves and then the Guard. I mean, the Guard just has a level of expertise that goes so far beyond the uniform that I wish they got more credit for what they actually bring to the fight.
And it is to take that a step further. When you deploy with Guard members and you're downrange with them, you might need a certain skill set that is not that you don't have co-located with you in it from an AFSC standpoint, and look to your right and to your left and, oh, hey, I do this Monday through Friday for the last 5 years. I got you. No, don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody was telling me about the person was an expert in telecommunications, and so they were having issues with something in their deployed unit, and here he is fixing all the comm gear because they couldn't get a comm guy out there for 2 or 3 days, and so
Right.
so he fixed it himself because that's what his normal career was. So you were in the South Carolina Guard, and then you moved to the North Carolina Guard. What was the point? How did that transition take place? What was the reason behind that?
This show is all about transparency. So I had some personality conflicts with leadership in South Carolina. Mm-hmm. And we just did not see eye to eye on a lot of things. And I actually requested to be non-retained and just told them, I don't want any part of this anymore. I would just prefer you non-retain me and I go on my way. and they obliged. I mean, I still have that non-retention letter. I saved it just so I could look at it and, you know, reflect on it every once in a while. Well, it just so happened that my commander then knew the former commander of the 235th, and they needed somebody with my skill set and, frankly, my demeanor to come in and make some changes. So I was approached about whether I would be interested in that, and I gave it some thought, and I decided to go ahead and pursue it. And it was one of the best things that I have ever done, career-wise.
You were talking about the transparency and talking about your shortcomings. At the same time, that shows you that you can recover from these things, and it's not a one mistake life that some people think that they live. And so you're just a testament to that, right? That being able to overcome some of those mistakes. And then you mentioned the relationship piece, and that's the thing about if you were on active duty and you went somewhere for 4 years, there's so much turnover that the person that you're having a personality conflict with, they might leave in the next year, or you might leave in the next year. But that's one thing about the Guard is that it is a family. It's like a big high school, and so those relationships matter for decades, not just 2 or 3 years. How does that impact your leadership style, knowing that somebody's going to be there far longer than that typical active duty 2 to 3 year cycle?
I think it's because that leader is going to be in that position for a lot longer than an active duty leader would. It's imperative that you put the right person in that position because they're going to be there for who knows how long. Um, and again, being fully transparent, I was not mentored like I should have been early on. No fault to my leadership back then. I think it was just a culture they were brought up in that you should know what to do, you should know how to act, you should know how to lead, and just watch me and what I do and just emulate that versus being an active participant in trying to mold and mentor somebody. And I I was not mentored right, so a lot of my leadership style in the beginning was not good, um, and it was really a trial and error type of scenario. And early on, that trial and error lost me respect from the people that I led because it came across as not respecting them. So they did it. They did what I asked begrudgingly and not because they understood, mission parameters or what needed to be done. So, and I didn't do a good job in the beginning of explaining why I needed certain things done a certain way. And some of it was just uh, being too picky and not allowing people to figure processes out on their own. You get the same result, just a different way. But I was just so zero focused on, I want this done my way, and I don't need to tell you why. Just do it. And that was the wrong attitude to take early on. So it took me a while to learn that. So again, that transition up to the 235th really helped me. It gave me a second chance and helped me kind of start over with a different leadership style. Now, I will say some of the 235th members will still tell you that I was pretty hard on them, and I was, but I was with a purpose this time. Whereas before, I was just because I'm in charge. You're going to do what I say. But fast forward, I was hard on them, but I explained to them why and gave them an opportunity to do things their way. So, but still, there was some friction there because of previous leadership that was in those positions. So, it was tough in the beginning up there as well.
your younger years in South Carolina, that leadership style you're talking about of saying, do it because I said so. Was that the way your father was a parent to you? Where do you think that came from?
Yeah, I think it was twofold. Yes, that was the environment I was raised in. Um, so, going forward into adulthood, that's kind of the attitude I took on. And then the other piece of that was I felt like I had something to prove. You know, as an only child, I was constantly trying to, prove myself to my dad. Um, and that just becomes ingrained in you that, okay, this is the way life is. You always have to prove yourself to somebody so they recognize who you are and what you bring into the organization. So I, I, I credit those two things with my leadership style, along with, not having that military mentor come by me and say, "Hey, dude, I get it, but here's how this needs to look. Here's how you need to function in this type of environment."
Well, obviously, you collected a lot of advice and followed that advice along through your career because you made it to Chief Master Sergeant, the highest enlisted rank in the military services, which people don't realize that's the top 1%. It's such a difficult thing to achieve that that's just a badge of honor in itself. And so I was wondering, what did becoming a chief mean to you?
You know, I, this is going to sound terrible, maybe.
That's the way this is what we this is the way we got to hear it.
I don't know that it meant anything to me. Um, I mean, I was proud that I reached that point. I knew everything that I had done to get there, what I had learned, what I had listened to, what I had not listened to, and so it was. I was grateful that I got the opportunity to be in that position, in spite of a lot of screw ups along the way, and I mean some pretty hefty ones. And yet, certain leaders throughout my career saw there was potential there, and they gave me a chance, and then another chance, and another chance. So, being in that position, there's a lot of clout that comes with it. Um, there's just some innate respect that comes with it, just because you don't have to say anything. You just wearing the rank, and it's just, no, here comes a chief. Um, so at that point, I was already in this transition point, or I had already moved past the transition point of being a different leader. Um, but now, being at the chief rank, it gave me a seat at a table that I wouldn't ordinarily have. And that was what I ran into with when I went up to DC as the career field manager. The guy I replaced was a E8. He was a senior, and he told me that his biggest fight was getting a seat at the table with other chiefs and officers. And
Mm.
because he wasn't a chief, they didn't listen to him. He didn't get invited. And so being able to get in that position as a chief was all right. Now we're going to make a difference here.
So as a chief, once again, the highest enlisted rank, there still is that structure, the officer versus enlisted. What did you learn about speaking truth upward?
I think I told you one time, I said, "Sir, I'm here to tell you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear." And that's what I had to make sure that as I was speaking upward, that I was giving leadership an accurate representation of whatever they were asking for, it and not telling them what they wanted to hear. Sir, everything's great. People are taken care of. equipment's good, mission accomplished, when really that's not the case. I'm just, my job was to keep you from getting punched in the face. So I was going to, figuratively speaking. So now I will say that I didn't necessarily change how I spoke upward. And I mean, I wanted to be authentic, and I had commanders in the past tell me they appreciated my demeanor and candidness and vernacular and how I presented things, but at the same time, they would tell me, "Yeah, you don't need to be so hardcore, don't be like that." But then they would send me their scrub airmen to try to change. I'm like, you can't have this both ways. So I made a concerted effort to not change who I was, and if that rubbed people the wrong way when speaking upward, then it's not because I'm trying to be an asshole. It's just I'm going to be very frank. I'm not going to fluff what I have to say up. Just here's the info. Here's where we're at. Here's what we're doing to try to solve this problem. Or what do you need me to do, sir?
Why is that such a hard lesson for leaders to learn? Being surrounded by yes men is just a bunch of group thinkers. It just frustrates the daylights out of me that people cannot accept constructive criticism. Of course, there's a place and time to have those conversations. You're not going to be blurting that out and being disrespectful in the middle of a meeting. But if your skin is so thin that you can't handle closed door constructive feedback from the folks that work with you, I mean, we won't even get into names, but my goodness, how many times I tried to lead upward and was just either smacked down or just completely ignored. And you look back at those times and you think to yourself, it's been proven time and time again that if you surround yourself with folks that disagree with you and think differently, the team excels far beyond what would be expected of them.
Completely agree. Completely agree. I saw too many yes men and women, and it got the organization nowhere. In fact, we went backwards, and I couldn't do that. It went against my nature. I just wasn't going to do that, because ultimately the way I thought about it was, we're in the military. We are tasked with, protecting and defending the citizens of this country. So we need to be doing everything we can to improve whatever we're doing, whatever process, whatever mission, whatever you're assigned, make it better, because the end game is we need to be sure what we do as military members is in adherence to what the citizens expect us to be doing.
Oh boy. Okay.
One of the things I kept telling my people was, I want you to be efficient, effective, and lethal. That's the end game. So if I can make you a little more efficient, a little more effective, and you're a little more lethal, then that makes us as a military organization function better.
It's just like, what do commanders miss because people filter information before it reaches them? At what level of information are you missing because it's so diluted, it's so watered down before it actually gets to that decision-making process? That's where I get so frustrated. And the fact that you were frank and you were forward, perhaps that's why you left South Carolina, because of that friction. But at the same time, that friction was needed. And it was the same thing when we were together. If you're not going to speak truth to power and you're not going to stand up for what's right, all these people are getting left behind. They're getting bad advice. They're not getting the best out of their team, and it's just frustrating. But yeah, I'm
You
just
know, I think people just get too comfortable. They like their comfort. They don't like adversity. I mean, not that I like it, but people just they shy away from it. They shy away from confrontation. They just want to live a comfortable life, and that comfort, I believe, for these some of these people expands into not just their personal life, but their professional life as well. And in the military profession, you can't get comfortable.
that now you've refreshed my memory of what I wanted to chat about and the lesson that I learned about leading upward rather than just leading downward. I was a young captain in the C 17 and I was flying an approach with our chief pilot. And so she was a lieutenant colonel, wonderful lady. And she's flying, and I am the co pilot for this particular procedure. And it started to go bad. So she started going, veering off of the approach, getting wide of the runway. And this is all a simulated environment. So she's looking down at the instruments and she's not looking outside the window because she's trying to, you have to practice doing these approaches just off the instruments. And she's veering further and further off to the side. And we're getting lower and lower. And then finally she looks up and she says, "Oh my goodness, go around, go around." And she, put max throttles in and we went around. And afterwards, after that flight, she sat me down and she said, "Mike, I'm a lieutenant colonel. I'm the chief pilot, but don't ever be scared to speak up when something is going wrong." And at that moment, I came to the realization, okay, I do need to speak up. Whether I'm right or wrong, I do need to speak up because it was a dangerous environment for everybody. And it's I took that with the rest of my career. Whenever I flew with guys, I said, "Look, my name is Mike. My name is not Colonel so-and-so or leader whatever. My name is Mike. I make mistakes. I have no qualms whatsoever with you calling those mistakes out." Whereas I've flown with other folks that are, how dare you second guess my judgment? I'm like, okay, here we
Yeah,
go. So it's just,
message received.
yeah. What did the people who loved you see before you could see it? You're hard on yourself. What is it? What is it that they see that you don't see?
When you say people that love me, who are you referring to?
I mean, right now I'm thinking, military wise, but yeah, I mean, family, friends, but I was thinking military.
Okay. Um, so my first flight chief, he was a former Marine. Like I said earlier, early in my career, I was just trying to prove to everyone that, you know, I'm worth keeping around. I had something to prove to everybody. Uh, and so I worked my ass off, um, for the wrong reasons, but I was working my ass off. I was studying everything I could get my hands on, just trying to be a better airman, trying to be because early in those days I was avionics flight line technician on the F-16. So I was trying to learn everything I possibly could. So it, from their perspective, it looked like I had value. Here we have this airman, he's busting his ass trying to do a good job. And, one day I went to lunch with a guy, an NCO, and he was 21 and I wasn't. And we went to this restaurant and he asked, "Do you want a beer?" I'm looking at, we're in uniform. I'm thinking, is
Hmm.
this normal? Is this right? Sure, I'll take one. And you'll see where I'm going with this in a second. Again, this was my first chance. This is the first time I had a first chance, all right, or a second chance, whatever. So me and him sat there for a while and we drank a lot.
Mm.
And then when we get back on base, we walk in the shop and my flight chief says, he looked at me and said, "Where the hell have you been?" And I said, "I was at lunch." Well, he's walking towards me and he stops about 6 inches from my face and he looks at me and you can tell he's sniffing the air and he goes, "Get outside right now." So we go outside and he tore me up one side and down the other. And he said, "Who did you go to lunch with?" I said, "No, no, no, I'm not saying." No, no. And he goes, "This is what I want you to do." He's, I had you base PA'd you because I needed you to go work an aircraft with one of the older guys, and who happened to be my lead trainer. And he goes, "Since I already know what you've been doing," he said, "you're going to sit down at this table and you're not going to move. You're not going to talk to anybody. You just sit there." So I sat there the rest of the day. And then the next morning I came in, he took me back outside and said, "Look, don't you ever do that to me again." He said, "I can tell there's something about you that I want to groom. I want to bring out." He said, I can tell you have something there." He said, "Don't ruin it by doing that again."
Mm.
And man, that stuck with me. That was one of the leadership traits that I took forward was, you can have airmen screw up, but like you said earlier, it doesn't have to be the end of their career. You know, yeah, you screwed up. There might be some consequences from it, but you can recover from it. And, I'm living proof that you can recover from it. Um, Again, based on the rank that I attained and ultimately the last position I held. So it is, you can recover. You just need to have the right person to be your mentor and help guide you along the way.
You mentioned that story about alcohol. You've been open about struggling with anger and alcohol. When did those struggles begin to cost you more than they gave you?
That would, I, I believe that point was when I had my motorcycle wreck. Um, I was just coming off of a divorce, and my head was just all over the place, and I was already struggling with what had transpired with in South Carolina, and I wouldn't say I was new to North Carolina. I'd been there about 2 years, a year and a half, year or something like that. So I was still trying to, feel my way around the unit, and I just I drank a lot. I drank a
Mm.
lot. And ironically, that it only got worse. You know, yeah, it tapered off for a while, but then it got worse. It got a lot worse. But at that particular day, um, I was very, very drunk, and I got on my motorcycle to meet my parents for lunch or dinner, lunch, down the road from the house, and I didn't even see the van pull out in front of me, and I just plowed right into the side of it and ended up on the other side of the van in the middle of the road, unconscious, and people around, they thought I was dead because I wasn't moving, and they called life flight in, but when I started moving around and sat up, they canceled life flight and the ambulance was dispatched, and it was just a mess. It was a mess. It was a mess. And I thought for sure that again my career was over. Um, and in any other circumstance, it probably would have been. But there again, I had leaders that saw something in me and decided to provide me some top cover. And they did what they were supposed to do from a legal standpoint and from a command standpoint, but they could have pushed it a lot further than they did.
You mentioned being unconscious. When you regained consciousness, do you remember this event, or when did you realize the ramifications of the mistake you had made?
I knew pretty soon after, right after it happened. Maybe it was probably when I was laying in the hospital, and I've got a highway patrolman standing next to me, and he's reading me my rights, telling me, well, obviously I'm not going to take you to jail because you're laying in the hospital, but you get charged with DUI. So again, it's a fortunate chain of events that got reduced to reckless driving, but it was a very, very dark time for me, and the first one of a few to come.
What would you say to that senior leader, that veteran or guardsman listening to this conversation we're having right now, who is still performing well in public but falling apart in private?
You have to lean on your brothers and sisters in arms that are around you, and it doesn't have to be in uniform. I mean, if you have someone within your circle that you trust, you've got to lean on those people. And I didn't lean on anybody. Again, I was Chief Brown. I didn't need to lean on anybody. I just assumed I could handle it all myself until I couldn't. And it nearly took my life because of that. I wish I had made some different decisions back then. And one of those being having someone I truly 100% unequivocally trusted. And, I don't know that I had that person back then because I pretty much kept everybody arm's length.
Yeah, man.
And that was by design.
I was so frustrated with you because you kept pushing me away, and I kept trying and chatting with you because, once again, we've shared before that, one of my best friends took his life, and I just cannot, selfishly, I guess, right? I mean, selfishly, I just cannot lose another friend to suicide. So I was so frustrated with you because I don't know if you remember the phone call when I was in Hawaii, but I was in a very remote part of the island, so just no cell coverage whatsoever. And once I got back into a cellular area and my phone started blowing up with messages and text messages and all this stuff, you son of a bitch, and you were against me all along. And I would just thought to myself, where is this guy in his headspace that he's saying this to somebody that's done nothing but tried to help? What was going on there?
I wish I had a good explanation for it. For context, what you're speaking of was after I had retired and had come out here. There was a convergence of several different massive life changes that happened all at once. It wasn't wasn't a gradual retirement. It wasn't I was already here, established with a support group. I say support, a network of people. It was just one day it's there, one day it's not. One day you're here, and the next day you're there. And I had let myself become too intertwined in who I was in uniform and versus just me as a person. Um, Almost like for a cheesy analogy, the uniform and my position, my rank was my Iron Man suit. And I had a friend tell me, hey, dude, when you retire, don't expect the Air Force to be calling you up afterwards saying, hey, Chief, we need your advice on something. He said, it will end. And I thought, yeah, whatever. Well, it ended. I mean, just overnight, you're at this high level tempo. The next day, you're not. And anybody that retires from the Air Force gets that email from ARPC, and the title of it says last communication. And I read that and I thought, damn, that's after 30 years. That's what you tell me. So going from that tempo one day, literally, and then the next day, nothing. And then, 2 weeks after that, selling most of my possessions, moving to California where I didn't have family, friends. I mean, it's just, I know Jen was here, and I mean, she was the reason I moved out here. But I didn't have a job, which I didn't necessarily need one, but sitting around the house doing nothing after those life change events, it was, I've never experienced anything like that. It was some of the darkest, those were the darkest times I've ever had. And that's early on when I told you that was the beginning of the drinking around the motorcycle accident. That pales in comparison to what transpired after that. It was, and I think I drank so much in such a short period of time that it has permanently altered my mental capacity a little bit.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I don't seem to have the sharpness I once had, just not that long ago. And some people will chalk that up to age, and I get it, but this is different. I can tell that this happened very quickly. And, I think my opinion is it's because of just a severe alcohol use that was going on for that period of time. But maybe it is just me getting old.
Well, a lot of those conversations that we had, for the folks that don't understand the difference between the East Coast and the West Coast, you basically move to a different country. I mean, here's this country boy, from South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia area, moving to California. I mean, you're going from hunting and beers in the backyard to avocado toast. I mean, the two locations are just so different. And then you don't have that support network. You just retired from the highest position you can have. Now you're home by yourself because your new bride still works full time. Yeah, man, that's a recipe for darkness, especially for somebody that already had a proclivity to it in the past. And that's why you remind me so much of Sean, because Sean was a very athletic guy like you, and that his being a police officer, that was his, like you said, his uniform, not his uniform, but his armor, if you will. And he was on the SWAT team, and he hurt his knee, he blew out his knee. And so he was off the SWAT team for a couple of years. And one time I'm having a conversation with him, and he's like, Mike, I'm the breach. That's my job on the SWAT team. I'm the breach. And so I can't be with my team because of my knee. And that's when I realized, oh man, this guy, his job has become his life. And I take those lessons, and I try to take those lessons and put them inside myself And so as I was preparing to retire, a year and a half out of preparing to retire, I made sure that I was disconnected from the job and that the job wasn't me. And I can honestly say it's been almost not quite 2 years since I've been retired. I don't think about being in uniform at all. I just had a conversation with Heather about it last night. I was like, you know what? I'm not nostalgic for the uniform. Did I give up general officer? Sure. Do I care? Nope. But part of that is because of seeing your struggles and seeing Sean's struggles. And I'm just so thankful that you're still here, man, because some of those conversations I had with you, I was very concerned. I mean, you remember me offering to have you fly out here and live in my basement because I was just so personally concerned about your well-being.
I 100% wholeheartedly believe that if it was not for you, Dan, and Jeremy, and Jen, I mean, I don't want to leave her out of this because she has been uh, the biggest supporter of me than I could ever ask for. So I want to make sure that she's named specifically in this response. But if it wasn't for you guys being my support network, I would not be here. I 100% believe I would not be here today. It was that bad.
And that's part of the reason why I think the military is such a wonderful culture, because we come from all these different communities all over the country, but in that military culture where they break you down and build you back up, there's a brotherhood, sisterhood, whatever you want to call it, that just there's not a lot of communities that can emulate it. And yeah, man, I think about you all the time. So now I need to ask you some personal questions. Most importantly, questions about me. I need some feedback from you.
Okay.
So what did you see in me as a commander that I may not have seen in myself?
Mike, I've talked to Jennifer about this several times. When I look back over my career and the people that I've worked for, commanders that I've worked for, I mean, I've had some really good ones, and I've had some not so good ones. But when it came to you, you brought something that I hadn't seen before in a leader, and that was your ability to really take a step back, dissect things from a very intellectual standpoint, but at the same time, have some empathy to the situation or to the person, but then at the same time, know what direction we as a group, squadron, whatever, needed to go in order to meet some mission objective, but at the same time, take care of people. It was just this at the same time, you were able to fit all those together. And I had not seen that before. And it was just refreshing to have somebody like you that I directly reported to that would hear what I had to say in a way that only I could say it, but at the same time, not take it personally, understand what I'm trying to say, and give me some feedback and all right, I hear what you're saying, Chief, but fill in the blank, we need to do this. And I would suggest, have you thought about this? And, I never really had that, have you thought about, because, I mean, let's be honest, most commanders look at a chief and go, oh, I'm sure he's got more time in service than I do. I'm sure they thought about this, that, or the other. And with you, it's just different, man. There's an aura about you that I really appreciated. And, as I'm looking at you on the screen, I can tell you still have it. And it's just, you're a solid dude, man. I can't say enough good things about your leadership style and just you as a person, dude. I just can't say enough.
I appreciate that, man. And it was just tongue in cheek saying, let's talk about me. I,
Hey, man, I got to credit where credit's due.
I, discipline is discipline for those you love. It's, it's so hard. And I treat everybody I work with like they're my kids or they're my brother or my sister. They're a loved one to me. And so when it comes time to discipline, I'm always thinking about these are long-standing relationships, in the Guard. We were talking about the active duty versus the Guard thing. These are long-standing relationships. So how do I discipline this person and still show them the love that they are going to get beyond this, right? So you said when you were a young airman, you were making all these mistakes and you had some great mentors along the way, or a couple mentors along the way that, were light on you when you were doing bad things. But I specifically remember being in my office one day and I was disciplining somebody and I said, look, we're going to stand up from this table and I'm going to give you a hug. And when that door opens, we're still friends. Whether I had to sign this letter of reprimand or whatever the punishment was at the time, but I still love you, brother. This is just about, maintaining good order and discipline. And whether you're ready for it or not, I'm going to stand up from this table and hug you. And when you walk by me in the hallway, you don't need to put your head down. You don't need to look off into the distance because I am not judging you. We've made mistakes. I've made plenty of them myself. Just ask my wife. And and to this day, that person that I had to give that letter of reprimand to, we're still friends to this day. Came to my retirement ceremony, reaches out to me on holidays because he knows I love him. He's a brother. He's a brother for life. Why is that so difficult for some other leaders to figure out? I don't know. We're all different.
I think that, yeah, I think we're all different, but I think some people just get too caught up in themselves.
Yeah.
They get too caught up in themselves, their positions of authority, and they just lose touch with the people that they're leading, and that's unfortunate. And I say that, I can say that because I did it early on as a leader.
All right. You ready for a lightning round to finish off our conversation?
Oh, bring it.
All righty. Best thing about being a chief?
Oh, God. Being able to truly make a difference at the strategic level.
Hardest thing about being a chief?
Being able to make a difference at the strategic level. No, although that is difficult. Being able to strike the balance between being a good mentor and being a good leader.
Best North Carolina memory?
God. I don't know that there's one specific, but I really enjoyed recognizing my people, be it, accommodation, achievement, promotion. I really enjoyed doing that in front of their peers. So if I had to put a marker on something that's what I enjoyed most, it was that action of being able to recognize them.
Best California surprise? And it's not avocado toast.
Birkenstocks.
I actually have Birkenstocks on right now.
Nope. Not having. my my transition will only go so far, and me wearing Birkenstocks is one of them.
Oh.
No, so Northern California, man, the weather up here is absolutely great.
Hmm.
No humidity. It's 60 degrees in the morning. I mean, it's just the weather's phenomenal up here. We're just over an hour from Lake Tahoe, so we're in the foothills of the mountains. It's just gorgeous up here. So I will say this. This is when I told Bill that I was coming out here in true Bill fashion. He's like, "Oh my God." He said, "What have you sold off? What are you going to do first?" I said, "Well, I got to sell my diesel truck because it's not California compliant. Uh, I'm going to sell my Harley because I'm just losing interest in that." I said, "I'm going to sell everything." And I said, "I'll take the car out there." I said, "But it's having trouble too." So a few months after I had been here, he said, "So what transitions have you made?" And I said, "Well, I sold the car and I bought a Jeep, and now we have paddle boards and kayaks." And he said, "Whatever you do, man," he said, "don't dye your hair and don't wear Birkenstocks."
Oh,
So
that's
he's been
hilarious.
funny. I talked to him the other day.
Hmm.
That's a character.
He's counting down the days too.
Yeah, he is.
So, a habit that keeps you sober, grounded, or steady.
This was will get me probably a little emotional if I talk about it too much.
Hmm.
Um, Jennifer, Jennifer does. Um, I'm not going to say that our relationship is without struggles because what relationship isn't, but uh, she is the right person for me. Everybody has the right person that fits them, that supports them, that just knows what to say at the right time, and that is definitely what she's been. Um, so I owe her a debt of gratitude I can never repay, but I'll keep trying.
I'm sure you'll bring a smile to her face when she listens to this. Um, Heather says to me, she's like, "Babe, you know why we're so good together? 22 years of marriage." She says, "Because you put up with my shit and I put up with your shit." And, relationships these days, here I am just, making wild accusations, but folks just don't always have that level of resiliency, respect, and love for each other to say, yeah, sometimes I'm a dumbass, or sometimes I do things that are annoying to you. I mean, hello, podcasting and photography and computers. And she says, yeah, she's like, I put up with your shit and you put up with mine. So it works. But
Yeah, it does.
so let me leave you with
But
this. I'm sorry, go
so I
ahead.
will say, it took me getting out of uniform to finally realize that, though.
Yeah.
I had to get past that transition point out of the military, and I'm 2.5 years out of that now. And it took a year and a half to, you know, get all that shit out of my head and
Mm.
kind of get, course corrected into having the right mindset. Because, everything got quiet
Mm.
mentally. Everything was quiet. I didn't have any distractions. And I had to start looking at James.
Mm.
And whenever I got past all that and started looking at, all right, what do I have right in front of me that I need to be thankful for? I mean, she's standing right there. And so I needed to get out of uniform um, in order to fix myself.
I think you'd make a
Shit.
great transition coach, for the folks that are getting ready to retire. I think you would be somebody to kind of let them know all the pitfalls and the feelings, and let you know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
It would allow you to stay connected to the community as well.
Yeah. And, that's been a curse and a blessing for the position I have now, working for the California Military Department. It's allowed me to stay connected. I'm still torn on whether that was a good idea or not, whether I just needed to sever the umbilical completely. But, I have to think things happen for a reason, and there's a reason why I'm in there. And I think the guys around me, the officers that I work with, a good group of guys, um, I think they've helped me in their own subtle ways, and they don't even know it. Help me get to the point where, all right, now I'm ready to just sever this all together and do something that James enjoys doing that's not putting on a uniform.
So let me finish with this. If you could go back to the 145th Operations Group for one day, what would you want to tell those airmen now?
Mm-hmm. Take care of the person to the right and to the left of you. Don't become so mission focused or self-centered that you lose sight of the people standing right next to you, because you never know what burden they're carrying, and they might need you to help them out. They might need you just to listen, or they might need to just go have a drink with. Maybe they don't have anything serious. They just want to feel included and appreciated. So that would be the thing I would tell them.